Resident Evil Retribution was released in 2012 with Paul What the Shit Anderson returning as writer, producer, and director. Mere seconds following the end of Afterlife, Mila Jovovich as Alice finds herself in Umbrella custody and subject to torture at the hands of Sienna Guillory's Jill Valentine, having been brainwashed into being an Umbrella soldier with the same spider bot bullshit that Wesker put her under in RE5. But hours after Jill just beams every single Uwe Boll movie into Alice's skull, or whatever the fuck they're doing, a system failure allows Alice to break out naturally while looking like a great value equivalent to the Gimp from Pulp Fiction. She then hooks up with freelance agent Ada Wong, played by Li Bingbing, and learns two major what the fucks. Sean Roberts' Albert Wesker is still alive, having apparently turned against Umbrella and leaving the Red Queen. The computer AI that controlled the Hive and nothing else in charge of Umbrella. And Alice and Ada are in an underwater facility in the middle of northern Russia. A facility that once was a Soviet submarine pen, but Umbrella converted it into a T-virus testing facility using clones as proxy. Alice and Ada are to meet up with a rescue team that includes Boris Kodjoe's Luther West and Resident Evil fan favorites Leon Kennedy, played by Johan Erb, and Barry Burton, played by Kevin Durand, in less than 90 minutes before a set of explosives Leon and Barry planted goes off, plunging the entire underwater facility underwater for all of eternity. Along with the amount of fucks I give. The more I dissect the series, the more convinced I become that Anderson did not plan anything beyond the first 3 Resident Evil movies. After the initial 3 made bank at the box office, Sony pretty much just let Anderson do whatever the hell he wanted with no adults from the studio on the set to go over his scripts with a fine-tooth comb and make sure his narrative wasn't an inconsistent, incoherent clusterfuck of epic proportions. If it doesn't have to be a David Lynch or Chris Nolan caliber art piece, okay? It can have the depth of a damp floor, so long as it's consistent in its narrative and the characters are actually semi-likable. But from Afterlife on up, Anderson just went miles out of his way to make this his and Mila's foreplay, haphazardly throw in characters, creatures, and clunkily recreated sequences from the games, and just mesh it with this disjointed sci-fi Mad Max buttfucks aliens narrative, and no one told him no. No one from the studio, from pre-production to principal photography to reshoots to all the way to the fucking editing process, pulled Anderson to the side and said, look, you got a bunch of cool shit, but it needs to weave together into a cohesive whole. You can't just throw 7 shades of amorphous sci-fi shit into a blender with hollow fan service and expect it to objectively work as a movie. Just because these movies made a shitload of money doesn't make them good. What bullshit got lifted this go-around? Oh, nothing much, just Ada's first encounter with Leon in RE4, replaced Leon with the cardboard standee I'm told is Mila Jovovich, plus the returning of the Magini from RE5, Umbrella apparently having the Las Plagas from RE4 and 5 because Larry and Leon and Barry, bleh. Leon and Barry encounter some Las Plagas undead, including one with a chainsaw. The concept of mercenaries infiltrating an underground Umbrella facility that carries multiple environments for the sole purpose of testing the T-virus was actually lifted from the 4th of S.D. Perry's 7-part series of Resident Evil novels, Underworld, which, by the way, had both Leon and Claire picking up after their brush with the virus in Raccoon City. There's a car chase with the Las Plagas zombies going after Alice and company that was ripped from RE5, except the characters are in a Rolls-Royce Phantom instead of a Hummer. The Hummer actually made more sense. The liquor is back in the form of one big motherfucker that puts people in egg sacs, a la Aliens, which I wish I had watched instead. And there's an admittedly okay scene of Alice and Ada squaring off against 2 executioners. Okay, since I brought up Ada, I'd like to point out Anderson's rampant inconsistency. So when he introduced Claire Redfield in Execution, he specifically stated that it wouldn't make sense to have Claire powwow around the desert in her classic RE2 outfit. Cut off shorts, black spandex, that look. Okay, kind of bullshit, but I was willing to accept it. But here's the issue. If it doesn't make sense to have Claire Mad Maxing about in Daisy Dukes, then why? In the righteous shit is Ada rocking her red dress from RE4 with that slit up the leg in the middle of northern Russia in the fucking winter when it's 50 butt fucking below. By the way, I know cloning is kind of a thing in the games, the various tyrants, for example, but brace yourself because this movie uses cloning as an excuse to bring characters back from previous movies for no other reason than for Anderson to weasel his way out of developing his own characters, all while filling the razor-thin narrative with a bloated cast of characters. By bloated, I'm talking the boomers from Left 4 Dead. And like Afterlife, the only major highlight of the movie is the action, barring the fact that I hate the 3D gimmick, and it is nothing more than a gimmick. The action is framed properly, the editing is passable enough to keep it entertaining, and while there is still a lot of slow-mo abuse, it's not quite as pervasive as it was in Afterlife. Anderson apparently took inspiration from Asian action cinema, specifically movies from Thailand like Born to Fight, Ong Bak, The Protector, for the fight scenes, which does show. There's a lot of knee strikes and elbow strikes, and you can tell the actors are actually doing what they can to sell their hits. There is impact, and the CGI is mostly alright, even when it's obviously CGI. Unfortunately, Anderson still opts for using cheap CG blood over in-camera blood squibs, which is an issue for me. Even with movies that I like, John Wick, for example, I find CG blood distracting and annoying. As for what passes for a cast, nope. Still don't give a damn about Milla Jovovich's Alice, though there is a brief period where she plays one of the clones for teen virus testing, and she's supposed to be a suburban housewife, and I was actually liking her acting in that brief segment. Among the returning cast, Sienna Guillory is alright as Joe Valentine just because she's not an attitudinal bitch like she was in Apocalypse. Unfortunately, she's just there. She's just there so Anderson can reference that one time she was a brainwashed soldier. Michelle Rodriguez, Oded Fair, and Colin Salmon make their returns as clones of Rain, Carlos Oliveira, and One. Plus, there's another clone of Rain in the form of a suburban broad with a Prius. I'm just guessing these characters are here because Anderson's a hack and doesn't understand how filling the runtime out with more characters than necessary actually detracts from the movie. These characters serve no purpose. They're dead. Let them stay dead. Boris Kodjoe returning as Luther West is a nice bonus, but there isn't much of a bonus in it because, again, he's just one of a cast of 9 billion that the movie refuses to latch onto for even a proper minute. It is nice to see Sean Roberts come back to do an Agent Smith impersonation as Albert Wesker, but his role in this movie is pretty much reduced to an extended cameo. Li Bingbing sells some passable Ada Wong cosplay, but her acting leaves something to be desired largely because it's not even her voice we're hearing in the movie. No, apparently she couldn't speak English very well. So while she did her best to sell the lines she's given, she was dubbed over in post-production. And the actress they hired was Sally Cahill, who voiced Ada in the original Resident Evil 2 and RE4. Johan Erb also sells some decent Leon cosplay, but coming from a Leon fan, this motherfucker ain't Leon. That ain't exactly Erb's fault because he did what he could with the material he was given, and he does, at the very least, look like Leon. But like Wentworth Miller's Chris Redfield, this is just a hollow representation of a beloved character. Kevin Durant is not Barry Burton in appearance or personality. He's just there so we can have Leon and Barry kill what few undead Alice leaves for them in a Resident Evil movie. David Harbour and Jeffrey Dean Morgan would have been better picks. Megan Carpentier takes over the role of the Red Queen, evidently plotting to destroy humanity despite the White Queen in Extinction saying she locked down the hive in order to keep the virus from reaching the surface and destroying humanity. She's an evil computer AI that's evil because evil. until the next movie when she actually isn't, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Resident Evil Retribution is almost the second worst of the series for me. It's just beat out by Apocalypse, but what follows is easily the worst Resident Evil thing that has ever been pitched out since Operation Raccoon City. As for Retribution, if you've been following the movies up to this point and you like them up to now, it's a hard fucking rental.